I think a lot of the times we don't recognize it because we don't understand the importance and the key of taking the blame for your life circumstances. Though every situation in your life isn't your fault, the way in which you react to those circumstances is.
And that's something that's also been something that I've had is negative self-talk with like being.
How about being 0-1?
Right.
How about walking to the cage knowing that this dude is trying to take your head off?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no more. Yeah.
One of the most stressful moments of my life. Honestly, one of the most stressful because I was literally 0-1. I dropped out of law school to do this. I literally went against everything my friends, my family, my parents told me, and here I am 0-1, feeling like I have to prove myself in some way, some shape or form.
You want to go on the history of Muay Thai?
Yes.
So are you familiar at all with like the difference that like are you familiar with what Lethway is?
Mm-mm.
You kind of talked about it. There was a dude named David LeDuc who went on Joe Rogan's in 2000.
LeDuc is incredible.
I think he went on there in like 2018 or something, fairly recently. Maybe it was like 2017. David LeDuc is like a renowned Lethway fighter.
Like people call him the greatest,
Lethway
like
fighter
the
of all
greatest
time.
Lethway practitioner ever. Yeah.
And what Lethway is, it's Burmese boxing.
Okay.
So the way I look at it is, and I kind of created this own little intuitive thing myself, TLC. That's the way I look at it. You have Thai, Laos, and Cambodian boxing. Thai, which is going to be Muay Thai, Muay Lao, and Muay Khao. Those are going to be your three different types of TLC boxing. But then you have Burmese boxing. And Burmese boxing, what separates it from the TLC boxing styles from Muay Thai, Muay Lao, or from Muay Thai, Muay Lao, and Muay Khao is going to be the scoring systems and the way in which they're structurally fought. Just like bare knuckle versus MMA, right?
Right.
There's not any wraps. It's bare knuckle in Lethway. There's wraps in Muay Thai and in all the Thai fighting boxing. There's headbutts in Lethway. There's no headbutts. There's no headbutts in the Thai fighting styles. There is the only way you can win in Lethway is via knockout. The way you win in Muay Thai or in any of the Thai fightings is point fighting, which is you get the points off of the elbows, you get the points off the kicks, you get the points off of the kicks, the elbows, and the knees, right? In Burmese boxing, you don't get rewarded off of the point of each one being more.
There's not points.
There's no points. It's all knockout.
Knockout.
Right. So that's Burmese boxing, right? The idea is, and this is David LeDuc kind of went in on this a little bit on Joe Rogan's.
I haven't seen his episode. I'll have to
It's
go
good,
listen
bro.
to
It's
it.
good. The difference in them is back in the day, I think from like 1400s to like the 1700s, you had the Toungoo Empire, the Tungtu Empire. I can't remember what they were called. There was an empire in the Southeast Asian region, Southeast Asian region, where they controlled all the lands. They controlled Cambodia. They controlled Burma, which is now known as Myanmar, which is right next to Thailand. It's west of Thailand. And then and like Laos and all these different Southeast Asian countries. One kingdom controlled all of them, and it was based out of essentially Burma. Like it was based out of Myanmar, the Puntu Empire, whatever it was called. What happened was, this is the idea, is they spread the Burmese boxing to Thailand, to Laos, to Cambodia, to where over time, when those Burmese boxing in those respective states evolved, they evolved into
Muay Thai.
Okay. Muay Lao, Muay Khao. You see what I mean?
That's cool.
And the difference is in the evolution of actually trying to, let's say, popularize those Thai TLC boxing styles versus the Burmese boxing style. Just like bare knuckle versus like boxing, let's say, there's a legit level of savagery, primitive savagery in one versus the other.
Yeah.
But full circle, what the Thai ended up doing with the people, well, I mean, I don't know if specifically it was the Thai that did it, but I'm sure it was a mix between Thailand, the Laos, and the Cambodians, like all three of them. Because they say Thailand, or they say Muay Thai as we know it, actually came from Cambodia, but it got popularized by Thailand. So Muay Khao should technically be, I guess, the overarching descriptor of Thai boxing.
Of the martial arts.
Of the martial arts,
Very
right.
well.
But technically, since they all come from what? Burmese boxing, it should technically be called Burmese boxing. But the history of it is, once you had the transition from bare knuckle to, let's say, to padding, from headbutting to no headbutting, from knockout claws to point fighting, there was an incentive to clean up and be less tolerant to certain aspects of Lithway, which separates Lithway fighters from Muay Thai fighters. Lithway fighters, and this is where my predisposition comes in, I don't wear gloves on the bag for a reason. I headbutt the bag for a reason.
Right.
There's a pain tolerance because of the bare knuckle and because of the tools like your head being able to use in Lithway that separates legit a certain level of savagery from a Thai boxing. But here's the defect of that. Thai fighters have a kicking prowess that Lithway fighters don't necessarily have, because kicking's rewarded in Thai boxing.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily rewarded in Lithway, just the knockout's rewarded in Lithway. So they'll swing more punching-wise in Lithway. They're more technical in Muay Thai because of that stark difference.
And kicking is much more for in that sense is like much more for range finders and type of things than anything. Leduc uses lots of front kicks as like range finders and things like that more
Just
than
like a
anything.
jab. Just like a jab.
Just like a jab. Just like a jab.
Just like a jab,
Yeah.
right. I didn't mean to go on a little history lesson, but
No, I love that.
Right, that puts it in perspective just where, because you have a Lithway understanding, or at least what Lithway even is, and now telling you there's an even more savage version of Muay Thai where you're allowed to headbutt people and it's bare knuckle.
And
Which is
Dave
kinda
LeDuc
savage.
100% is your guy. I mean, I think I went on a spree the day I found out about him. I watched like 6 of his fights in a row that I could find.
He's a savage.
He is. Watching UFC guys walk out is like, there's this intimidation factor that you have. Dave LeDuc, looking at that man, I don't know that I could look him in his eyes on a normal day. Like, that's how he looks.
The intimidation factor of just like, have you ever seen a Muay Thai fight, a traditional Muay Thai fight?
Yeah, with
Like the
John,
drums and the bells,
yeah,
like
it's
in the,
insane.
and
Like how Pride was back in the
Bro,
day.
and just the respect factor, the
Yes.
respect factor is such an intimidating like environment. Just like walking into a jiu-jitsu gym, just like looking at these black belts, and he's kind of looking at me longer than I should stare. He's still staring at me. Oh my god! I remember feeling that when I went to high altitude martial arts in Aurora. Saw Neil Magny there training.
Yeah.
Right, Neil Magny, and a few other people were there training. And I remember like when I first walked in, there was legit all these black belts
Cool, calm, collected.
just staring at me as I'm walking by. I actually kind of like sitting like this. Man, I kind of feel Shifu.
You're like a
sitting
monk.
this.
Again.
Like a monk. Again. Nice.
And that's the crazy thing too, is like I never really had the big ego where like I'm not gonna fucking tap. There's no way I'm not gonna tap. Like I'm not gonna tap. Like I've seen people come in and out of the gym, literally refusing to tap and will put themselves to sleep because they
have that ego.
Yeah.
They have that undissolved ego.
You're right.
You good, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm all right. Jesus.
Nice.
Right over here. Yeah.
My boy Justin, when we were like 12, he was the first dude. Like me and him would, to surprise you a little bit, the reason why I was even adequate being able to grapple with you when we were wrestling around, or even when we were at Glory wrestling around, is because when I was younger, that's all me and Justin used to do was wrestle each other. And he was the first person ever I even learned what an armbar was. He put me in an armbar and legit started pulling on my arm until it started legit like feeling like it was gonna break. And I wasn't gonna tap. And then I felt it starting to, and I was like, bro, what are you doing?
Like it was his fault, right? Like
And
it was his fault.
And he literally, from that moment on, when we were 12, was like, bro, in this household, if you're gonna wrestle with us, you better tap. Otherwise, I'm going to snap your arm. And me trying to understand that while he was also my best friend was a weird dichotomy. But going into jiu-jitsu gym, thank goodness you didn't have that ego to force you to have to learn the hard way.
Right.
So,
Which a lot of people hold on to very tightly.
Right. Very tight. Pun intended. Very tight. Especially if they're wearing a gi.
You're speaking to two individuals who know about the ego, my brother.
Right,
Speaking
literally.
to two individuals who know about it.
When I was talking about knowing the wayward qualities of your natural predispositions, whether genetically or environmentally nurtured, knowing that I had very harsh narcissistic egoistic tendencies allowed me to then not only identify them but reconcile with them and then utilize that power with great responsibility.
Absolutely. Frankly, recognizing is sometimes the more difficult part.
100%.
Right?
Dissolving the delusion that causes you to not be able to recognize it.
Quit lying to yourself.
Quit lying to yourself.
It just is, and it's not just that easy, but if you tell yourself that everybody has self-talk, everybody has negative self-talk, positive self-talk, what happens in that negative self-talk? What happens in that positive self-talk? Oh, you made a great decision. Congratulations. This is what happens because you did this. Great job. But most of the time, that's not what it is in most people's heads, I think. Most of the time, it's your failure. You suck. You can't do anything right. Well, fucking go do something right then that you know you can do right.
Right.
There are things that you do right. There are things that you're worthy of, and create that worthiness for yourself.
I think a lot of the times we don't recognize it because we don't understand the importance and the key of taking the blame for your life circumstances. Though every situation in your life isn't your fault, the way in which you react to those circumstances is.
Yeah, I think you just explained it there. You very briefly touched it. Once you are able to start understanding where that negative self-talk comes from, where your felt shortcomings come from, once you're able to recognize those, then slowly you start having less of them,
right,
and less of them, and less of them. And then before you know it,
nearly
those
none
thoughts
of them
don't exist anymore.
Exactly.
And I'm not quite there. I don't think anybody is
ever quite there.
But you can get damn close, and I know it because I know where I've come from already.
Exactly. And you know what your internal monologue used to sound like.
Exactly.
And you now know how the negative self-talk is less weighing on your soul because you're able to not only do something about it, but recognize that there is something you can do about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
And that's something that's also been something that I've had is negative self-talk with like being.
How about being 0-1?
Right.
How about walking to the cage knowing that this dude is trying to take your head off?
Yeah.
Negative the negative self-talk. Bro, when we were in the back, I literally, my whole thing was like, I don't want to say anything that might detour whatever self-talk Sam's doing right now because he needs to be clean, clear, and dry for what works for him. So my own self-talk was like, okay, like make sure that, like I was even having my own negative self-talk. I was having to reassure myself and I wasn't even fighting. You know what I'm saying?
I can't imagine it. Listening to Cowboy is the thing that made me think about that. He talks about how every single fight, dude's had 50 pro fights. Every single fight, he doesn't know which cowboy's going to show up because he can't conquer it.
So going on that a little bit though.
Literally just like self-talk. This is actually dope because we haven't even like talked about this since, I don't think, like just like you being in the back with me, like that shit was so dope.
I don't think we have even reflect on it. Right. Yeah. Now we think about it.
Did it ease you up?
Yes,
having him back there?
Like having a familiar face, like childhood, like homie, like with me back there in one of the most stressful moments of my life. Honestly, one of the most stressful because I was literally 0-1. I dropped out of law school to do this. I literally went against everything my friends, my family, my parents told me, and here I am, 0-1, feeling like I have to prove myself in some way, some shape or form. I have a really close friend to kind of relax me, ease me up, which you did a very great job of staying composed with me, keeping me in check, making sure I was warm, staying ready. What was that like for you? Like, how was that experience?
Like my whole thing was I need to do everything I can to not be in his way and only be there to boost him. So for me, it's got to be a hard line. It was the first time I'd ever done that. Like it's the first time I'd ever been in a corner with somebody. Yeah. And so how was it for me? It was trying to navigate the same emotions without having to step in the cage. A little easier, you know what I'm saying? By a little, I mean a lot easier. But I think just by me even hearing you articulate that, it echoes a lot of the same feelings I had.
Right.
Because I was like, Sam's 0-1. Like, we had that conversation before the fight.
Yes,
we had
yes.
I think it was maybe a session or two before leading up to the fight.
Yes.
It was getting closer where for me, like you're asking where my mindset was at, it was even more important to not be in his way. So for me, even the words I say, I have to make sure I'm not saying anything that may like trigger something that may make him overthink or any, like there's little things like that I'm thinking of, right? So then it got to the point where we legit had this conversation, Tyler, where I told him flat out, there's people you're going to fight. There's people that you're going to compete against that come from a different mindset because of their life circumstance. So you, coming from where you come from, having a father who's a lawyer, having the mental prowess to be able to go to law school and not have to fight, makes it more important for you to understand the necessity of developing that savage mindset.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Deep down, it don't matter if you have the lawyer potential. It don't matter if you grew up in the streets. When you step in that cage, it's who is the most savage? Who is the better man on that night? And again, it's not necessarily even about winning or losing. It's about being so prepared that when they do close that gate, you don't care what the outcome is, so long you've done everything you could to produce the results that you end up producing, which is when you're 0-1 and we go out there thinking, holy shit, we're 0-1. I don't want Sam to lose. And my first time being in the corners with the dude who's 0-1, and if he loses, how does that look on me? Holy F, from a selfish standpoint. All of that builds up to, it's like, trust the process. And guess what? When the round's ending, first of all, let me just say this. Sam's in the middle of the fight. I got Zach Cummings right next to me, UFC fighter, and I'm sitting here. I go, Spall! I just yell it. And Zach says, no! He goes, no, we wanted to circle out. And I'm like, sorry. I just thought he was supposed to sprawl. Sorry. I will stick to striking. But literally, I remember that happening, and then we saw it, and then 10 seconds left, we hear the bell, and I get up, I'm like, oh shit, we gotta go in the ring. Oh my God, like, is Sam even bleeding? I'm gonna have to look at, what if he has a cut? I'm gonna have to look at his face with that cut. Holy shit. No, I think if there's a cut man, you said only he would go in. Right.
Okay.
But I'm thinking,
that's hilarious.
I'm thinking of, only Zach and the cut man would go in. But I'm thinking of all this stuff, 10 seconds, we get up, as we get up, bing, the bell rings, Sam's like up, celebrating. And me and Zach look at each other, and we're like, what just happened? And then there's a part of me that's like, he had to have won. And then he's just like, he's over here like, he had to have won. And lo and behold, due to the preparation, when the opportunity presented itself, good luck created the good luck that was supposed to be created manifested itself. And now look where we're at. 2-1.
Yep.
2-0 since that L. Not because anything other than Sam realizing that loss wasn't a loss, but a learning lesson that he could take wisdom from.
Yes. And I will remember that first fight for the rest of my life. Bro. Most definitely.